Harry Orr, how are you, mate?
Wonderful, thanks, man. Yourself?
Very well, thank you, mate. Thank you very much for jumping on.
My pleasure, man. My pleasure.
Mate, tired, stressed out, low energy, poor sex drive, trouble losing weight are some of the common problems that people have. Of the thousands of clients that you work with, what are some of the poor lifestyle choices people make and how can they fix them?
I think the mistake a lot of people make, and this is through no fault of kind of their own, partly due to our innate, I guess, desire to be lazy and to get a quick fix. But then also, you combine that with the very skilled marketers and salesmen out there selling us, these quick fix solutions and all that kind of stuff, is focusing too much on the symptom rather than trying to find the root cause. So whether it's, sex drive or erectile dysfunction, going to the blue pill, going to the latest test booster or the thing that's going to get you the hardest, or if it's low on energy, going to caffeine or energy drinks, pre-workouts that keep getting stronger and stronger and stronger, or if it's like mental capacity, going to nootropics and things like that. But looking at, well, why do I have this deficiency in the first place? Like, why am I so tired? Why do I struggle to get ordered up? Why am I not, jumping at the bit to, have sex with my missus or to go out and, seek that if everything else is good in life? Like, why am I lacking that? And then for a lot of people, that comes back down to like a poorly functioning nervous system, or maybe their sleep isn't as good as it could be. Like the foundational, 8 hours that we're supposed to get, not enough people get that, which then leads into all those issues, which then we just kind of band-aid and mask, and then we repeat the cycle because you have too much caffeine, you have too much of that, ruins your sleep, and then you go through the next day, the next morning, you need more caffeine to get to the same level, and the cycle repeats itself. And so I think it's trying to treat a symptom with just a band-aid. Whereas if we go to, well, why am I feeling this way? Let's do something about that. And because for all those things you mentioned, if you get better sleep, if you've got a better functioning nervous system, then you're not going to be as tired. You're going to have better mental bandwidth so you can handle stressful situations. You're not going to get as anxious. And then your hormones are going to be more in sync with your circadian rhythm. You're going to naturally have better, circadian rhythm and better functioning hormones. So most guys are going to, have no issues getting it up and have issues with sex drive or confidence after they optimize those things. And naturally, a lot of those issues that they were previously looking for those supplements to kind of fix, kind of dissipate anyway. And then
Yeah.
even if you get to that point, you're like, you know what, it has improved, but I still want that little bit more. Okay, cool. Take your supplement, take, that next step, but you'll get a hell of a lot more out of it. But most people don't even need that extra step because they've fixed everything by just pulling on the biggest lever, which is their sleep, their nervous system, and the root cause of what's going on, really.
Yeah, definitely. Well, they say we are 100 times more stressed than our great grandfathers. And, they didn't have iPhones and technology that we have now. What do you think has contributed to this? And how can men raise their testosterone levels naturally?
I think one of the reasons that we're so stressed is because very rarely do we switch off. Like, because we have our phones and we're so accessible 24/7, it's assumed that we are accessible 24/7. So people have this inclination to feel like they can send, or that they have to respond to messages at all hours of the day. They can scroll on social media at all hours of the day and the night. And so that there's never this like end. It's not like, okay, you go to work, you go to this social event, and then you go home and either, with your partner or on your own, that was cool, that was fun, have a bit of a debrief, okay, night's over, like, your lights are out, everything's good, you go to bed, you wake up, and then you just kind of go through your routines. as you feel necessary. You're not bombarded with notifications of telling you, hey, this person messaged you, this person liked your post, this person sent you an email, all that kind of stuff. And your phone, if you allow all those notifications, is telling you what to do and what to feel. Right. And so it
Yes.
makes it extremely hard to then switch off if you've got this thing that's constantly demanding attention. You know, it makes it
Yes.
very, very difficult. So one of the first things that I like a lot of people to do is turn off your notifications. Like turn them off so that you decide when you want to check your phone. You decide when you want to reply to people, like when you're accessible, and you kind of set those boundaries up so that you can get into a better habit and better routines with your sleep and with your work and your focus and like all those kind of things. And then that enables you to see what habits are serving you and then which ones are, detracting from your overall experience, and then which ones maybe don't help you, whether it's to, get better results in the gym, focus more at work, or, if you are trying to increase your testosterone, then, well, what habits are you maybe doing that diminish that for a lot of people? So, you start to be in tune with your body a lot more when you allow yourself to not be dictated by external stimulus as to how you should feel. So, and
Yeah.
I say external, but I also mean, caffeines and sugars and things like that that dictate how you feel internally. But from external, like your phone or other things like that, are telling you this is what you should be doing. Like if you can take that time to just disconnect, okay, I'm going to go a day or a couple of days without stimulants, without these things of telling me now I'm up, now I'm down, now I'm all these kind of things. I'm taking some time off my phone that tells me, hey, you should check me now because you've got these notifications. I'll do it when I feel. Thank you.
Yeah.
And then when you have that level of intuition, it's much easier to then regulate that. Okay, well, I'm feeling a little bit stressed or a little bit anxious now. Why might I be feeling like that? And then
Yes.
you've got that control. You don't have this flashing thing saying, um, like this flashing thing telling you that people are trying to reach you, or that you need to be doing this, or if you're on social media comparing yourself to other people, that you're not good enough and you're lazy and like whatever else you start telling yourself, which isn't really constructive, right?
Yes. You made some very good points there too, Harry. And one thing was sleep. We, I think we're in a sleep loss epidemic, and millions of people around the world report not having enough sleep. Um, what do you think, besides mobile phone usage, what else is causing the sleep loss epidemic?
I think part of it is almost like a FOMO. Like there's this fear of
Yeah.
missing out or not just missing, but missing out on opportunities maybe. So it's, if I go to sleep early, or if I don't get up at 4 a.m., then I miss this opportunity to work more, or to get to the gym, or to go out and party, or I'm, miss, that's my window to watch Netflix and relax because I earned it, or, whatever we tell ourselves. And so I think it's like that, but then also that little bit of just lack of education. Because when you look at the data, when you look at all the things that sleep contributes to, both like how it helps, but then also how sleep deprivation negatively impacts, you look at all that data, all that research, and it's so compelling that it becomes a no-brainer. And I
Yeah.
know it's hard, like even myself, where I consider myself to know a fair bit of the repercussions of poor sleep and all that kind of stuff, that I still find myself sometimes when I've got a lot to do, oh, I'll just get up at 4, I'll just get up at 4, 3:30, and I'll just have an extra coffee and I'll just get through the day. That's like the instinctual response for a lot of people. And it's hard to override that. But when you think bigger picture, right? And I think for me personally, I tie this into training a lot. So I used to be one of those people that was just 6 a.m. every day, wake up, double scoop pre-workout, watch some motivational shit, get you to the gym, train for 2 hours, no ifs, no buts, no maybe, doesn't matter if it's Christmas Day, your birthday, your mum's funeral, fucking every day of the year, you get there. Doesn't matter if you went to bed at 6 p.m. or 1 a.m., like, you get to the gym. And whilst that level of work ethic is cool, and I was proud of that to a certain extent, there comes a time where that becomes detrimental. Because
Yes.
you can't just keep doing that. There are days where our body and our mind is more suited to rest, to getting
Yeah.
that sleep, to those rejuvenating activities. And so for me, getting an Aura ring was the greatest thing that I could do because it
Yeah.
took my emotion out of it. Like, I have this thing that says you slept like shit and your heart rate variability is through the floor. Like, you can go and train, but you're just going to cook yourself even more. Go for a swim, go for an easy walk, have a sleep in. Well, first of all, like, you shouldn't need a sleep in, like, if you're allowing yourself optimal sleep window anyway, but like, fix that stuff first, right? And so it takes some shifting and prioritizing that future self, knowing that, okay, right now I feel like training, I feel like getting up early, I feel like doing those things because that's what I've always done. But the research shows that if I prioritize my sleep, I will have better cognitive function. I will have better performance in the gym. I will be able to back it up better the next day, and I will get more output based on every unit of work. And so,
Yes.
one of the things that massively helped me in this space was shifting my mindset around, especially around work, from the time like invested to the result or the output. So a book I highly recommend a lot of people read is Stephen Kotler's The Art of Impossible. And so he talks about flow state, high level productivity and efficiency and all that kind of stuff. And one of the things he talks about in his book is being able to take a break and then come back to what you're doing. So they study these people and they track, the people that were working 8, 10, 12 hours a day and would go pretty close to straight through, right? They'd take a piss break, they'd go get a coffee, but other than that, they wouldn't take any meaningful or intentional breaks. And then so they tracked their output, and then they tracked the output of the person that would say work for 55 minutes, take a 5-minute break, get some water, stand in the sun, come back and do that kind of stuff. And
Yep.
the output for the person that was taking the break at their 7th, 8th, 9th hour was comparable to the person working straight through of their 2nd hour, right? So
Yeah.
the level of output that you can maintain for a greater period of time is so much higher just by working smarter, not harder. Right?
Yes.
And
Yeah.
so a story I use or that I actually heard, or that reminded me of the story that I saw yesterday from Simon Sinek, is about the lumberjacks. And so there's these two lumberjacks, and then one guy is just, slaving away, working hard, never fucking stops. And the other guy disappears for like an hour every day. And then eventually, the output is just massively different. And so he asked him, he's like, dude, I work an hour more than you every single day, and your output is twice that of mine. Like, where do you go? What are you doing? I go home and sharpen my axe, bro.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
sharpen the axe and then it's going to be so much more effective, right? So I find that's like a really good analogy for whether it's taking that rest day, sharpening the axe of letting your muscles recover, or taking that
Yeah.
time to let your brain, relax, like just chill out that little bit. Because I promise you, like, working yourself to death will not get you a better or a faster result.
Yeah. It's amazing, Harry. I read that book, Why We Sleep by Matthew Walker, and he outlines in the book some of the deleterious effects that sleep has. And one of the things that sleep does is if you're underslept, it'll alter the balance between cortisol and insulin. And you'll see a spike, if I can remember, ghrelin and leptin. I think ghrelin was the hunger hormone and leptin is the satiating hormone that keeps you full. And no one ever said when they're underslept, you know what, last night I could not stop eating broccoli and Brussels sprouts. I mean, you're reaching
Yeah.
for the worst kind of fucking foods like chips and Pringles, chocolate, things like that.
Mm-hmm.
With your clients, how have you developed a sleep schedule, and what are some of the habits that you've implemented with your clients to help restore their sleep?
So I like to work backwards from in that space. So identifying what their morning routine needs to look like. So for most people that have a set time that they need to start work, what does your morning routine look like, or what would you like it to look like? Are you the person that would like to go and train before work, like, or you've got a family, you just want to get up and have breakfast with them? What does that look like? And then according to that schedule, what time do you need to get up? 7 o'clock, 5 o'clock, 6? What does that look like? All right, cool. We work backwards from there. We need to allow 8 hours in bed. So if you're going to bed, if you need to be up at 6, you need to be in bed by 10. Awesome. And then so we work backwards again from there. The last 60 minutes, I like to say, is proper wind down time. So that's no screens, your blue light blocking glasses on, all that kind of stuff. And so what that looks, it's slightly different for everybody. Some people can't stand the thought of meditation. They'd rather jump off a cliff. Other people are like, yep, I'll do as much of that as I can. But it's essentially practices that enable us to process the day. A self-reflection piece, I think, is really valuable. Whether you do that mentally or, I suggest kind of writing it down so you've got a record of it, because then that allows you to then reflect. All right, well, today, how'd I do? Like, was today a day that I was proud of, that I was productive, that everything went to plan? Well, and then what enabled that? Okay, what did I do last night? Like, did I nail my evening routine, which meant I got a great night's sleep, which meant I had more bandwidth, I was more energetic, I had the mental capacity to curb those cravings, to stick to my plan, to do all those kind of things? Awesome. We've got feedback to say that works. Beautiful, man. Let's do that again. Or on the flip side, today didn't go so well. Maybe I was stressed. Maybe I snapped at someone. Maybe I gave in and got KFC on the way home or something like that. And then again, okay, well, why? Was it because I didn't get a good night's sleep? Was it because I didn't do some part of my routine that usually enables me to do that? Whatever it might be. And then you can start to identify the trends in the days that you crush it and you feel good, you're productive and all those things, versus the days that get away from you, you're not your best self and just not your best work. And then so it starts to become like you've got data to say what you need to do. And then before that, it's just up to each individual. In terms of like dinner times, usually I suggest at least 2 hours before dinner. That allows enough time for digestion as well, because then if you're trying to digest while you're sleeping, that's gonna fuck up your sleep and ruin things in that space as well. And then depends if people have got a family, if they've got kids, putting them to bed, having time with the missus, all that kind of stuff. But the last 60 minutes is like the main thing that, whatever the situation is, I highly recommend dimming the lights, off the screens, blue light blocking glasses on, and then either some journal time with the missus or the partner or whatever that looks like. And, that sets most people up for a good night's sleep.
Yes. What I find fascinating too, Harry, is nutrition and how that can actually affect sleep or even productivity throughout the day. The Braverman test, which you used for me when you prepped me up for my bodybuilding comp, was very interesting. Serotonin, which is the neurotransmitter that aids sleep, so high in carbohydrate foods tend to be very beneficial for bedtime. But have you done much research on certain food pairings and what that can be used for your clients to help with restful sleep?
So for most people, I think, that it's exactly right. If you have trouble getting to sleep, then having a carbohydrate rich meal as your last meal can be really helpful. And so for people that haven't experienced that before, think about when you say maybe at an Easter or Christmas or family lunch of sorts, and then you have this big feed, and then by 2-3 o'clock in the afternoon, everybody's ready for a nap, everyone's super lethargic. That's the feeling that we're going for at the end of the day. But that really only works if you, like, with the allocation of most of your carbs at at night. If you're having a huge amount of carbs consistently throughout the day, then you're not going to be as sensitive to it. So it doesn't work as well. And so that, I know a lot of people talk about turkey as being a big contributor
Yep.
to that serotonin as well.
It's high in L-tryptophan, I think,
Yep.
turkey. Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Exactly right, man. So things like that. But then also, I think one thing that, as a general approach, what is even more important than the foods themselves is also the timing of that last meal. So it doesn't
Yeah.
matter what you eat, even if it is you're focused on all the turkey, your sweet potato, you're not eating trash, but you eat literally 30 minutes before you go to bed, then your guts are going to be digesting while you're trying to get to sleep. So your heart rate's not going to lower, and you're not going to get into a deep sleep till much later in the night, which is going to screw up your cycles and stuff like that. So making sure that you can have that as early as possible, at least 2 hours before bed, I think is beneficial for most people. If you can tack a small walk in there after dinner to aid that digestion process,
Yeah.
then bonus points. But like for
Yes.
most people, being at just try it, try the timing, try the routine, stick to it for a week, see what you notice. Is it easier for me to get to sleep? Do I wake up feeling rested? Do I wake up throughout the night? What changes there? If that's a positive change, awesome. Or if it's, and not, or there's like negative, repercussions to it. Some people might eat really early and then they find that they wake up at, 1 or 3 o'clock in the morning. Like if that's
Yeah.
you, have a teaspoon of raw honey before you go to bed. That will help your liver to, it will give your liver something to process so that it doesn't drop your blood sugar levels and spike your cortisol, which is essentially what wakes you up. So that'll help
Yeah.
you get through the night until you can break the fast with your breakfast in the morning and go from there. But
Yes.
finding that routine of whatever's sustainable for you as well.
Yes. It's interesting too, Harry. You touched on caffeine. And I love coffee. I really do. I enjoy it. And it's a very social thing that we do. But it is important that people understand that caffeine consumption also has a downside. The idea of having a cup of coffee in the morning at, say, 7 o'clock, I think has a half-life of up to around 6 hours and a quarter life of up to 12 hours. So if you have a cup of coffee at 7 a.m., a quarter of that is still in your system at 7 p.m. at night. What's your thoughts on caffeine consumption? And especially before weight training, caffeine can also help with mood and increase dopamine and performance, but there is a caveat to caffeine. What's your thoughts on caffeine consumption?
Of course. So one of the first things I get all of our guys to do is to, first of all, cut all their stimulants.
Yeah.
Cut caffeine, cut your pre-workouts, all that kind of stuff. Not because I'm against coffee. Personally, same thing. Love it, love the taste of it, love the experience, love the social aspect, all that kind of stuff. But the caveat to that is, first of all, are you having it because you like it or because you need it? If you feel like you cannot function without caffeine, like you can't think straight, you don't have the energy, you don't have any of those things, then again, like we started the conversation, what's the root cause? Is your sleep trash? Is that why you feel like you need it? Is there something else that's going on that has this addiction to it that you need to have this thing, otherwise you can't function? Okay, probably address that thing first. And then the second thing beyond that is the timing of the caffeine as well.
Yeah.
So for a lot of people that habitually wake up, slap the kettle on, down a coffee before they've even opened their eyes, and then, wonder why they're getting that 2 p.m. crash, then that's probably not helpful. So, you want to wait that 60 to 90 minutes after you've woken up so that all that adenosine can be flushed out of your brain, and you'll feel it, right? Like when you first wake up, doesn't matter how good your sleep is, naturally you're a bit groggy, right? You need that adenosine to kind of clear out, but you get the body moving, you hydrate yourself, you walk around, you get some light exposure, and that'll naturally kind of clear out. And then from there, if it's part of your day or you want to have one, whatever, okay, cool. Enjoy your cup of coffee from there. And then, I'd say listen to your body as to how you process caffeine. So there's going to be some people that I used to work in a cafe, and there was the owner there that would tell me if he couldn't sleep at 1 o'clock in the morning, he would go downstairs, make himself an espresso, take it back up to bed, and sip it sitting in bed and fall asleep halfway through.
I
Like,
don't know how those people do that.
no
I don't
idea,
know
man.
how. Yeah, I don't know
No
how
idea.
people can just have a cup of coffee before bed and go to sleep.
No idea. Like my dad will do that as well. Not an espresso, but he'll make himself a coffee after dinner, have half of it, and then go off to sleep. Like, it just blows my mind. And so obviously there's so many things that you could look into of like, oh well, what's the actual quality of your sleep? What's all that kind of stuff, right? But then your sensitivity to caffeine is like something that's biological. It's like inbuilt into you. Some people will have one shot and then be wired all day, and other people can drink, a kilo of caffeine and just be seemingly fine. And so identifying how that kind of affects you, because for me at least anyway, I know there is a threshold that beyond that, it's not effective. It makes me feel anxious, my guts go a little bit churny, and I get really irritable and on edge, and I'm just like frustrating. It's like getting the death wobbles when you're skateboarding. You're going so fast that eventually you're like, whoa, until you just like stack it, eat shit, and then it's hard to clean that mess up, man.
Yeah, yeah. You touched on light exposure, but also the idea of delaying caffeine for that 60 to 90 minutes. That's very interesting, because I have heard Andrew Huberman say if you can delay caffeine within that 60 to 90-minute window, that adenosine molecule that builds up throughout the course of the day is that sleep pressure that enables us to get to sleep at night. But then when we wake up in the morning, some of that adenosine is still floating around in our brain. And then obviously caffeine hijacks the receptor sites, and that's why we feel more alert or more awake. But then sometimes if you have coffee straight after you wake up at around 3 p.m., you might get that 3 o'clock itis. Talk to me about light exposure. So first thing in the morning, seeing or getting as much light in the eyes as possible. The science to that, what's so interesting, I find, is a lot of people reach for their phone first thing, but if people can actually go outside and get some bright light first thing in the morning, really has a profound effect on their total day. Talk to me about that.
Yeah. So like preparing for your sleep actually starts with that light exposure first thing in the morning, because our biology, like, we're not just stable state humans. Like, we just don't have steady levels of energy, of hormones, of like anything. Like, we go in these peaks and troughs, and naturally there's got to be something that regulates all that. And that internal clock, that circadian rhythm, is what regulates everything. When we're hungry, when we've got energy, when we need to sleep, when we've got, releasing the hormones and all that other stuff. And so one of the biggest governing factors on that circadian rhythm is light exposure. And so that light first thing in the morning, that bright sunlight, is one of the biggest cues that signals the start of that day. And so the more consistent that you can be with that exposure, not just in the morning, but then even in the afternoon as well as it's setting, and then the rest of your routine, the more succinct and predictable your body becomes in some of those patterns. Right. Yeah. So, to come back to that, 2 to 3 p.m. slump that a lot of people get, that's, first of all, that's a natural dip in energy, because we're not just buzzing all the time. Like, we wake up, and then after that, 60 to or 1 to 2 hours after waking, we hit that first kind of peak, lasts for an hour or two, then we dip off a little bit. And, that first little dip is around just after lunch. But if you've had caffeine within the first 60 to 90 minutes, and then, at that point, now you've got all the adenosine being released, and, that's catching up, now it's making you groggy. You've just had a big lunch, either big in like total volume or very carb heavy. That's going to emphasize that crash as well. And then so instead of just having a light lull, you've got this like crash into a brick wall type of effect, which is where then a lot of people reach for more caffeine, reach for sugar, reach for some other pick-me-up to kind of get them through the day, which either throws out their diet if they're trying to lose weight, or, throws out their sleep routine if it's caffeine or stimulant based, and causes those kind of issues. So
yes,
when you when you have that rhythm throughout the body, it makes it easier to plan your day. right? And plan your week. Or if you're a female, kind of plan your month as well, because you're going to have, obviously we're lucky enough to only function on 24 hours. Girls have to function on 28 days. It's a little bit harder to manage. But, for us, it becomes easier to manage. Okay, cool. I know I'm going to have this bit of a lull early in the afternoon. Probably don't plan anything too intensive in that time if you can avoid it. Maybe do some NSDR, maybe respond to a couple emails, stuff that isn't massively taxing. And then after that, when you come out of that, okay, cool. Now we're in for bout 2 or bout 3, depending on your day, of work to finish the day strong. And you can go from there. Yes. And then you're not trying to fight against biology. You're working with it. And it will be so much fucking easier.
Yeah. What are some of the supplements that you recommend for your clients to aid sleep? I heavily impress upon the importance of magnesium, and magnesium has had such a profound effect on my sleep. And I mean, there's so many different forms of magnesium. Magnesium's responsible for 300 biochemical reactions in the human body. I use a particular brand called magnesium L-threonate, which is an interesting one because that's able to cross the blood-brain barrier. And they've done study on magnesium L-threonate, especially with Alzheimer and dementia patients. What sort of magnesium supplements have you recommended for your clients, and or even a stack that you would recommend?
So for sleep, magnesium 100%. Everyone needs magnesium, and even more so if you're someone that trains quite intensely, your need for that goes up because obviously you need it for your muscle repair and recovery and things like that. So magnesium glycinate for muscular recovery and things like that is the general one, which is a little bit cheaper than L-threonate, because as good as that is for your brain function and crossing that barrier, it is a little bit pricier than the rest of them. But if that's in the client's budget, then 100%. I personally use like a combination of both. Then depending on what else they need, essentially. So there's things like the magnesium, which is kind of a non-negotiable for anyone. But I'm a big believer in the minimal effective dose. So first of all, I like people to, okay, let's change your lifestyle and like those routines and then see what changes. Like, I don't just want to nuke someone with $1,000 worth of supplements and like all this shit. And then, okay, cool, we've got the result, but what got us the result? Was it all necessary? Maybe, maybe not. So, the next thing that I'll suggest, if someone is super stressed, then the Relax blend that I make for Primal Energies, which is a combination of mushroom reishi, rhodiola rosea, which is another adaptogen, amazing for people with anxiety, for calming the nervous system, and then chamomile extract, which, chamomile is where apigenin comes from, which people like Andrew Huberman and things like that are now suggesting as a great sleep enhancer. I know a lot of people are moving away from recommending melatonin for sleep. I think they did studies on mice and it was like fucking up their hormones and shit like that, like pretty horrendous. And to be honest, like not many people need melatonin, in my opinion anyway. Like it won't actually help your sleep quality. It just helps you get to sleep. And so, which I think for 99% of people you can get that same result just by changing the environment, dimming the lights, getting off the screens, the blue light block glasses, those kind of things. And
I have heard that too, Harry. There are certain melatonin supplements that will enable you to get to sleep, but then they won't help you stay asleep. Some people report having interrupted sleep, waking up throughout the night. So it's interesting. You touched on your business, which is Primal Energies, which I find fascinating, which is mushroom extracts. Talk to me about that, mate.
So the mushroom extracts that I made, it kind of just started as like a personal interest. Like I've always been of the, I guess, been attracted to, natural remedies, natural ways of living, of doing things. And even, when I was as a chef, had that interest in like kind of growing my own food and doing all that stuff. And so a few years ago, one of the other coaches I was working with, suggested mushroom extracts. I was like, what? What are you talking about? Like magic mushrooms? He's like, nah, you just like, which is the common thing that a lot of people think
Yeah.
of. And so he's like, nah, man, there's these mushrooms that, one's for energy. You can take some for stress, for gut health, for like just overall longevity and vitality, all that kind of stuff. And so, went and bought the stack, tried them all out, and was massively impressed. Like just from a mushroom, I was super impressed that I could feel those results, and it was naturally grown. It wasn't, this pharmaceutical powder or highly processed thing or anything like that. And then went down that rabbit hole of, well, if it's just a natural fruit, if it's just a natural mushroom, like, how do we grow it? And then so went down that rabbit hole, figured out how to grow it, figured out how to extract it, how to, go through that kind of process, and tested it, made one that was like, pretty sure it was like 90% alcohol, the first one I made, because I had no idea what combos or ratios or what the fuck I was doing. But gave it to a few people and they liked it as well and felt a massive difference, and then kind of gave me that almost kind of proof of concept that was like, well, dude, if you can like make this, tidy it up a little bit, but make this consistently, then, be happy to recommend this to people. And, one of those people was James that kind of gave me that green light. And I was, blessed to be in a position where, we were already helping people with their sleep, with their nervous system, with their energy, already suggesting supplements and things like that. And was in a position that I could offer that to people as well. And so, I'm not a salesman. I'm not a marketer. Had I had to do this without having that access, I don't think I'd be in the position that I am now with the business. So I'm super grateful to be able to do that. But I've loved that kind of journey of just making these extracts just from natural compounds, but to support people in a holistic way as well. Because the beautiful thing about mushrooms is it's not just, here, you just take this for sleep, you just take this for this, you just take it for like one thing. Like if you look up the reishi mushroom, it's referred to as the mushroom of immortality, because they literally used it for cancer, for immune health, for cardiovascular health, for sleep, for anxiety, for like all these different things. Like if you had a pill from Big Pharma that could do all that with no side effects, how much do you think they charge you for that thing?
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Like they would buy it and lock the recipe in a fucking safe so it never sees the light of day. Like, so to me, if you can find something natural that does that, pretty wild.
And what are some of the mushroom blends that you use in your products? You mentioned reishi, which is for helping relaxation and sleep. What are some of the other mushroom blends that you have?
So the others that I've got at the moment, one's called Lucid, which is a lion's mane base paired with Bacopa monnieri and blueberry. So two other compounds that have been used for, cognitive health, memory, and things like that, which is again used for focus. Some people even use it for sleep as well. I don't know the mechanism of action here, but a lot of people report having improved REM state of sleep when having lion's mane before bed, which is quite interesting.
Interesting.
And which one of the things that I really like about the mushrooms is that, like, even though, for example, for the Lucid, for lion's mane, you can have it during the day when you need to focus or you need to, you've got a little bit more cognitive demand. But then you can also have it for sleep, and it improves your REM state of sleep, right? Which you would think would be polar opposite things required. And then so even with the relaxed band, like the reishi, it doesn't help sleep in the way that it makes you drowsy or sleepy or lethargic or anything. But it helps to, because it's an adaptogen, it helps to calm your nervous system so that you can have it through the day if you're a bit stressed or a bit anxious, and it just brings you back down to neutral. And then you can say, okay, well, what's the problem? What do I need to do about it? What can I do about it? Cool, let's go do that. Or if you have it as part of your evening routine, then, you continue down that staircase of unwinding, drift off to sleep, and then, drift into la la land and you're good. Yeah. So those are the two blends that I've got at the moment. I've got cordyceps as well, which is for energy and stamina, which is just a standalone mushroom. Like I haven't paired that with anything else just because I wanted to honor the kind of purity in that one, because that's a more expensive mushroom just because of the way that it's naturally grown. Like that's the one, if anyone's watched The Last of Us, the zombie mushroom, that's essentially cordyceps. Not that
Yep.
it would be able to overtake humans, really, but that is how it is grown. Or one of the species is grown is on like the caterpillar corpse, essentially,
Yeah.
which is
Yeah.
cool. And then the latest blend that I have is Brain Juice, which is a coffee alternative, a blend of ceremonial grade cacao, which makes it, tasty and chocolatey, combined with cordyceps extract for that stamina and that energy, and then lion's mane for that focus and that creativity. So you can get a bit of those desired outcomes that we often associate with coffee, but without having the negative impacts of either having, high irritability, higher stress, higher anxiety, or, sleep disruption if you're having it kind of later in the day and just need something to get you through that last afternoon push.
Yes. Yeah. And of the thousands of clients that you work with too, Harry, what are some of the common nutritional deficiencies that you find?
So, number one is probably vitamin D.
Yeah.
Vitamin D, both from a nutritional, a dietary standpoint, but also just not enough people get enough sun. Like it is
Yeah.
very hard to get enough sun when you think about, like, unless you work outside and you're blessed enough to do that, like to take the time to go and get enough sun, even if you get half an hour a day as a percentage, that's very small
Is
of
that
your entire.
full body exposure? Is shirt off full body exposure, or can it just be a little bit of part of your arms or your face?
As much as possible. So the more skin exposure you can get, obviously safe without getting burnt or anything like
Yeah.
that, then the high chance you're going to have of being able to absorb that vitamin D. Ideally, after you've had that sun exposure, you don't want to go and have a shower or go for a swim within 30 to 60 minutes straight away, just because of when the sun hits our skin releases the oil which contains the vitamin D, and our body has to kind of reabsorb it. So if you then go and wash all that off, then you won't be getting that vitamin D that you so desire. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. But then I think, again, supplementing with a vitamin D or just A, D, and K, especially like those fat soluble vitamins, because we do
Yeah.
need them in the right ratio, is highly
You can
beneficial
you
for a lot
can
of
find
people.
those vitamins A, D, E, and K in butter, can't you?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
In butter, in grass-fed beef fat as well. So,
Yeah.
just naturally, when you're cooking the steaks that are grass-fed, all that kind of stuff is going to be highly nutritional as well.
Yeah.
Like there's studies out there comparing grain-fed beef to grass-fed beef, and just the nutritional density,
It's
the
so
difference,
different.
even
Yeah.
in the fat, is
Yeah.
mind-blowing.
Yeah.
And I can't remember the name of it, but there was there's this compound, or there's this process within our body which it makes this type of water when we consume grass-fed beef fat. So there's something within that produces this water, and you can buy this type of water like to drink, but it's worth $160 a liter.
Yes.
But if
Yeah.
you eat enough grass-fed beef, your body will produce that naturally,
Wow.
right? Which
Wow.
is super impressive.
Yeah. There's so many different diets, Harry, and some people fast first thing in the morning. I'm one of those individuals that likes to have breakfast. I opt for more of a high protein, high fat breakfast. What's your thoughts on people that fast?
I think it depends on what do you want to get out of it. Like, what is it that you're hoping to achieve from fasting? Are you using it as a form of calorie restriction? Like, it's just easier for you mentally to not snack if you've just said, cool, I don't eat outside this window. Or is it because you're trying to improve cognitive function or for sleep? Or are you just doing it as a general health practice because of the longevity benefits to, caloric restriction and things like that, which have been well studied as well? And from personal experience, I do better fasting, like skipping my last meal. Like I'll notice that like my sleep is better, and I don't like I like having breakfast. I like starting the day that way, and it's just easier for me. But I know dinner can be a lot harder for some people, especially if they've got a family, if dinner is a social aspect as well, because it is quite hard sitting down, especially if it's just, you and one other person, and you're like, no, I'm fasting tonight.
Yeah.
You've got your glass of water and they're sitting there trying to eat, and you're like, well, this is not really the experience I was hoping. So it kind of comes into what's sustainable for the individual, but then also what
Yes.
they want to get out of it as well. Right?
You made some good points there too, Harry. I think it definitely does, depending on your energy requirements. I mean, if you were bodybuilding, then you would obviously need more food. If it's fat loss, there's so many different diets out there and people get confused. Where should people start?
Start with the quality of food. Like, even if you just forget counting calories for a second and just focus on eating foods that are minimally, if like ideally not processed,
Yeah.
and just whole nutritious foods, start there. Because the chance of you overeating a steak and some broccoli or some greens or some veggies and stuff like that, much lower than overeating a huge bowl of pasta, for example. So starting on that side, and it becomes a lot easier from that place to be able to eat intuitively as well. So then, coming back to the self-reflection piece, adding in that little element of, okay, well, after I ate each meal, say 60 minutes after I ate, how did I feel? Did I feel clear? Did I feel energized? Did I feel bloated? Did I feel lethargic? And then you can start to piece together, the foods that make you feel good, make you feel like energized and you can perform better on, versus the foods that are, not so conducive to that. And so,
Yes.
you can start on the broader terms of, cool, get rid of all your processed foods and your sugars and your glutens and all that kind of stuff. And that's a good place to start. And then kind of go from there as to what specifically for you helps you to feel the way that you'd like to. And then if you want to be more specific, then you can go into your portion control, then your timing, and then kind of work down that way. But if you start with just focus on nutritious foods that have been minimally processed, then it's harder to go wrong.
Yes. Yes. You've worked with clients that have food intolerances, and gluten and dairy are some of the common food intolerances that people have. Why do you think people should avoid dairy and gluten regardless?
So first of all, for gluten, like I was of the opinion that everyone is for gluten. There's like a scale, right? You've got people on one end that are celiac that will sniff it and then have a reaction and end up in hospital, and then you've got Italians that'll eat copious amounts of the
Yeah.
stuff and just like nothing. But even you go that little bit deeper, and you're like, well, why is that? Well, one of the reasons in America or Australia, it's not just the gluten, but it's the pesticides sprayed on the gluten that then also contribute to a lot of those gut issues as well. But then also looking at gluten from the perspective of looking at those nutritious foods, well, how do we benefit from having gluten in our diet? I'm yet to find a reason. I'm not
Yeah,
saying you
I
need
don't
to
think
be.
there is.
No,
Yeah.
that's what I mean. Like
Yeah.
I put gluten is in the same category as alcohol. Really,
Mm.
like have it if you want to. It's a special occasion because you just like to, and that's where you like to live your life, so to speak. But just know that it's not benefiting you in any way. Right. And
Yes.
then
Yeah.
so how you feel, how your body personally responds to that gluten, whether you get bloated, you get brain fog, you get backed up digestion wise, or you really don't notice an effect immediately, then, that's up to you personally. But even then, identifying how you respond to it can then give you more feedback as to, well, am I going to have this? Am I going to have that pastry with breakfast and I've got a big day of work, of stuff that I need to be really switched on and I need to perform my best?
Yeah.
Probably not. But for Christmas, we like to have freshly made croissants with, ham off the bone, cheese, tomato, stuff like that. And, that's something that I'm willing to tolerate being a little bit backed up that day or the next day for, because it's part of our thing. But it comes into kind of weighing up the decision.
Yeah. What's your thoughts on cheat meals? So The Rock, if you look at The Rock, he has like a stack of pancakes with maple syrup, and he'll have cream on top.
Yeah.
People people sort of are under the impression that cheat meals, obviously, like anything, it can just be in moderation. But have you done much reading or research into the idea of using cheat meals for fat loss, because I have heard people using cheat meals or carb loading if they were doing a bodybuilding competition or something like that. But what's your thoughts on cheat meals?
So I think it's worth noting that there's a difference between, using The Rock as an example in that space, there's a difference between eating for performance and eating for health, right? If your focus is just overall health, then you don't need to worry about carb loading. You don't really need to worry about being so restricted in other phases and then getting to the point where you need a cheat meal. And so I had a conversation before about this reward system. And I'm sure you've heard people say this, that, you're not a dog, so don't give yourself a fucking treat, right? You don't reward yourself with food. And so I like to use what I've heard coined, the video game reward system. So if the habit that you're rewarding is sticking to your diet, is sticking to your plan, whatever that might be, then finding a reward that incentivizes you to keep going, that incentivizes the hard effort and rewards the hard effort that you've done, as opposed to negating it. So, if you you stick to your calorie deficit all week, and then you go out to the buffet, you go to the dessert bar, and then just, eat your weight in dessert, well, you've probably just undone a lot of the hard work that you're rewarding yourself for.
Yeah.
And so it takes a lot longer. You go like backwards and things like that. So if you can find a reward system that doesn't undo a lot of that work, but incentivizes you to keep going. So, if that, say, you are looking for a cheat meal, or it's a meal of some sort, how can you then focus on, say, quality that doesn't break the caloric bank or doesn't set you back health-wise, but it still feels like a cheat? Or it still feels like a treat, I should say, not a cheat.
Yeah.
So that might be, for someone like us, a man who likes his steak, going to a nice steak restaurant. You buy the nice fucking tomahawk steak or something crazy, and just that with some red wine jus and some salt, and you just like
100%,
like
100%.
That is like gold, right? You don't need to go splurge on sugar or anything like that. That's going to fuck your sleep and whatever. Okay, you might eat a little bit more quantity wise than what you normally would, but the quality of it is still rewarding, and you're not going to feel guilty afterwards. So that mentality, I think, is worth noting for some people, of having those cheat meals or having those exemptions. If you then feel guilty afterwards, like, oh, I shouldn't have done that, and then you go back to grinding yourself on the treadmill or depriving yourself the next day, oh, I ate 200 calories over today, so now I have to, eat 200 calories less today, or do this. Unless you're training for a bodybuilding comp, or you're training for something that requires that level of detail, which is a very small percentage of the population, then I don't think that is 100% necessary.
Yes.
But to your original point about cheat meals, then having those cheat meals can extend someone's ability to stay onto the program, or to stay onto that course as well.
Yes.
But even in that case, I would still suggest focus on the quality of what you're having. If you want to have a treat, cool. Have a smaller treat that you know is going to be top tier quality, as opposed to just buying a packet of cookies from fucking Coles, which is not that great.
So people can have foods that they like, but there's always better options. So go for gluten-free pasta, or if you like chocolate, go for a lower sugar type of chocolate. So there are sort of options that people can have as well.
Yeah, for sure. I think one thing that's like, I'm not trying to push a certain level of restriction or like lifestyle onto anyone, but finding that balance of what you're okay with. If you're aiming for a certain level of results, know that what you put in is what you get out. So if you're happy to just get there in a few years' time, you're happy doing 50% of the time you're not going to make any results that way, but 60% of the time you're on the plan, 40% of the time you're fucking around having fun doing whatever, and that's the way that you want to live life, cool. Do your thing. Just know that it's going to take a lot longer to get there. But if you're okay with that, then no dramas. But then
Yes.
if you're not, or you feel guilty about those foods, or your values misalign with some of those actions, then that's where I'd say you need to be honest with yourself about which one needs to change, either
Yeah.
your actions or your thought process around those things, so that whatever approach you decide, you can be mentally okay with yourself and not be guilt ridden over these decisions.
Yes. Yes. You're a massive advocate for cold exposure. You do the ice baths, and there's a bunch of research now that backs it up on the benefits of cold exposure and what it can do for health. How have you found the whole ice bath and the idea of people utilizing cold, not just for physical health, but also for mental health?
So I used to be a very, very anxious person. I would avoid hard conversations. I hated feeling uncomfortable. I would avoid any situation that I knew would make me feel like that, which would mean that I would end up coaching clients for months after they'd finished because I was uncomfortable having that conversation about money, or I would not bring up an issue with a missus or with someone else because I didn't want to have that feeling, or I just wouldn't go in social situations that would make me feel anxious or awkward, and I would avoid that feeling. And one thing that cold exposure has really, really helped me with is when you get in there, it's cold.
Yeah,
Fucking sucks.
it
But like
does. Yeah,
you sit in it, right?
yeah,
You're not running away from it. You're not trying to avoid anything. You just sit in it. And I think that helps you to realize, to be able to sit in emotions, to sit in discomfort, to sit in
yes,
that space that naturally you want to get out of, and know that, okay, I can breathe. I'm all right. I'm not dying. Like, my limbs aren't falling off. Like, I may not have a dick by the end of it, but that's okay. It'll grow back, right? So
yeah,
then it makes everything else seem much less significant, really.
yes,
And then so I notice when I get out of those, my desire to avoid those situations, my desire to scroll mindlessly on social media or look for cheap hits of dopamine massively goes down. I come out, I'm focused, I've got that just get it done
yeah,
type attitude, which I find invaluable, especially, you have that in the early afternoon when naturally that's when we kind of fade out for the day. You have that bit
yeah,
of a reset, which isn't going to fuck your sleep or doesn't add calories to your plan or anything like that. And it just provides that little bit of a reset. So you almost get that, for me at least anyway, that peak productivity, that peak hours of the day are those first 4 to 5 hours in the morning. If I can get at least another 3 to 4 of those in the afternoon with a little reset like that, then that's a pretty solid day of productivity, of output.
How cold do you have your ice bath set at?
I don't have a thermostat or a temperature in there. I dare say it would be about like 2 degrees ish. So most of the time there's a skirting of ice around the outside that I have to break with a little 2 kilo plate. I've just got a freezer that I've sealed up with some waterproof sealant, and then it's just set as a timer. So midnight and midday, it turns on for 2 hours each time, and then I'll unplug that and get in once a day. And obviously, how frequently I'm using it, if I've got other people using it, or if I take a break from using it for a few days, then that'll like make it colder or not as cold and things like that. But generally, there's probably a few inches of decent ice around the outside,
Yeah.
so it's cold enough.
How long have you stayed in there for?
4 minutes is usually what I aim for, 3 to 4 minutes. But since hearing Andrew Huberman talk about his timing protocol for that, I found that really beneficial. And so, because naturally, coming from the world of weightlifting and gym, then you want that progression. You get used to anything, you get used to a certain weight or a certain exposure, and it just doesn't do it for you anymore. And with cold exposure, there's only so low you can make the temperature, and you've got shit to do, so you can't stay in there forever.
Yeah.
So you're then restricted as to how you can then what you adjust. And so I have then started switching to a more intuitive approach. So naturally, if if we are more stressed, we're sleep deprived, our nervous system's overstimulated, we're spending too much time in that sympathetic state, then we're going to be more sensitive, to the cold. So you're going to have to cross more thresholds to stay in there for that amount of time. Like on some
Yes.
of those days where you're just really tired, you're stressed out, you're just had enough of the world, whatever it might be, then just getting in might be that first drag. It's that
Yeah.
first push of like, okay, I can't be bothered to do this. I'd rather have a nap. I'd rather just get on with my day or whatever. But so the first one is actually just getting in there. And so those days might only be 2 to 3 minutes. But then on the other days where I'm feeling good, I've had good quality sleep, I've had like everything's kind of aligned in the way that I like it to, then you get in and you acclimatize really fast. And 4 minutes will go past like that. You're like, I feel like I could sit here for hours,
Yeah.
but you can't.
It's interesting. You touched on discomfort, and I heard Joe Rogan talk about this. He said voluntary adversity, putting yourself in a situation where it's uncomfortable and you have to force yourself to push through that mental barrier. I think some of the best workouts I've ever done are the workouts that I haven't felt like going, and they end up being really good workouts. Can you think of some times that you've worked out when you've thought to yourself, man, I'm absolutely fucked, but I feel really good? And why do you think people can also utilize exercise to not just help with their physical health, but also for their mental health as well?
And so our bodies are made to move.
Yeah.
Like our bodies we're not made to lie down or sit down for 8, 10, 12 plus hours a day. We're made to move, to do things. And so there's so many benefits that come from that naturally, whether you go in and try and push for a PB or you just go in there for a pump session, just get something out, then I don't know anyone that said, oh, I actually regret that session. I feel worse than I went in. Right? Like, unless you went in absolutely cooked and then tried to over caffeinate your way into having a good session, and then you absolutely fried your nervous system to the point where you're like lightheaded, dizzy, like holding the rail as you're limping down the stairs,
Yeah.
type thing. But then, even that in itself, like if you're finishing the session like that and a couple hours later your muscles don't feel that worked, okay, cool. You just fried your nervous system much more than you did any like actual muscular damage in that sense. So, okay, maybe prioritize some sun, some sleep, those restorative kind of protocols. But to your point, 100%. Like, I think having that movement space in your calendar, in your day, every single day should be a non-negotiable. It doesn't have to be the same practice every day. It doesn't have to be the same intensity every day, but there's something in there. Maybe some days it's a barefoot walk on the grass or on the beach, or you go for a swim in the ocean, maybe, or you swim some laps if that's your thing. Maybe other days it is a hectic CrossFit workout or some crazy deadlifts, a huge leg session, whatever it might be. But there's something in there that moves your body. Sometimes it gets your heart rate up. Sometimes it's a bit more like nourishing in terms of, okay, well, I'm just getting it done today because I've got other stuff going on. Like my stress backpack is full of other shit. I don't need to overload it with physical exercise or physical stress. So there's something there. But I think that in itself, that act of, well, I'm doing this for me, I'm giving back to myself, plus with all the endorphins and everything else you get from it, allows people, especially that rely on it for that mental piece, to find that little bit of clarity, to get out of their head a little bit. And so to that point, that reminds me, I'll be quick on this one. There's a book called Don't Believe Everything You Think. And so for a lot of people that might be overthinkers or really anxious and things like that, how movement then plays into this is, when you think about, say, the happiest moment of your life, you're probably not thinking too much. You're probably just in the moment, you were doing it. Maybe you were fucking on a jet ski in Miami with this, hot partner on your back, just running around like, this is fucking awesome, doing whatever. Like, you're just in the moment, you're just doing stuff. And then if you, on the flip side, think about the time that you were the most anxious, the most stressed, just at that lowest vibrational frequency that you could be at, you're probably not doing a whole lot of moving. Maybe you're
Yes.
just sitting on the bed, sitting in the corner, lying on the fetal position, just like all these thoughts going around your head, maybe tears stream down your face, just like in a really bad headspace. And so you look at those comparisons, like, okay, cool. If I'm in this space, I'm thinking too much and I'm not moving a whole lot. Naturally, if I start to move a little bit more, it'll help get me out of that space, because
Yeah.
naturally to move my muscles and to contract them and to do all that kind of stuff, and just especially if you're walking, there's more scenery, there's more things that take me out of this world, which isn't serving me right now, into everything else. And
Yeah.
then that can help to provide a bit more perspective and realize, okay, cool, maybe I over dramatize this thing, maybe it isn't that big a deal, I'm going to be okay.
Is there an optimal time to train? Some people train in the morning, some people train in the afternoons. I have heard that, especially for men, I think testosterone levels peak around 4 p.m., 5 p.m. in the afternoon, making it a really good time to train. But some people don't really like to train in the afternoon. They prefer to train in the morning.
Yep.
What's your thoughts?
The thing, even aside from the biology of it, I think it personally comes down to to your preference, which
Yeah.
will kind of subconsciously be determined by that anyway, because we've always got people that are more the morning lark based people versus your night owls and that kind of thing, versus people that just are somewhat dictated by other schedules, be it kids, be it work, be it whatever. So, ideally, it would be whenever you feel most motivated to train. For some people, it's the morning, they love to just get up, get into it, knock it off for the day, and all right, I feel good. I've ticked that bucket. There's less room for me to make an excuse not to train, all that kind of stuff, versus later in the day, and there's a whole lot more things that could go wrong that could provide as a reason or an excuse for you kind of to miss a session. But
Yeah.
then if that's when you prefer to train, I'd much prefer, cool, I can go to bed later, I can get up later, and then I'll just train after work. And if that suits you and your routine, then go for it. Naturally, if you're working with that inclination and what works better, you're going to be able to put more into it. Like if you're naturally a person that likes to sleep in and you're more of an afternoon night person and you're forcing yourself to get up in the morning, you might tick the session off, but you're probably not going to put your all into it. You're probably not going to
Yeah.
get the result that you want if you had that same session later on in the day.
Yes. There's so many different weight training protocols, and I'm sure you've tried all sorts. I've done a bunch. I've done giant sets, drop sets, supersets, post exhaustion, pre exhaustion. I've done 2-a-day training where you train two muscle groups or the same muscle group twice in one day. I'll never forget this. I trained with a bodybuilder called Ben Pekulski, and he ran us through a
Nice.
2-a-day leg session. So we did an AM leg session in the morning, and then we did giant sets in the afternoon. No joke,
Oh,
mate. I was struggling to get up off the fucking toilet seat, and it was just brutal. What's some workouts that you've done in the past that you had some massive success with?
for me, like I used to be very much of, like, I would train higher reps. That
Mhm.
was just something that I generally preferred when I first started training. But then as I've changed, I guess, over my training and my health journey, now I much prefer explosive and strength based training. So I noticed a much bigger change in my growth when I was doing lower reps, when I was
Yeah.
doing 3 to 5 kind of reps, for a couple of reasons. First of all, it's you feel like a big boy being able to slap more plates on on the
Mm.
bar. Like, one thing
Yeah.
that's good for your ego, but then also it helps to, what I found personally, it helps to get rid of the mental deciding factor of when you stop,
Yeah.
because naturally our brain likes to finish on an even. So we get to 10, we get to 12, maybe we get to 15. And whether you could do 17, 20, 30, you've stopped there. And then, so if that's the case, like if you could do 30, well, you haven't done a set of 15, you've done half a set of 30, which is pretty poor. You're not going to get results there. So
Yeah.
getting to that point where, because as you know, the mind will fail and want to give up a hell of a lot sooner than the body will. So it becomes a lot easier to see where that level is when you're doing heavier weights.
Yes.
Because you get to a point, okay, I'm going to max out at five reps. I literally get to the fifth and I'm like, ugh! No chance in hell am I getting a 6-1 up. All right, cool. For the next few sets, I'm going to do 3 or 4, depending on what stage I'm at in the overall protocol.
Yeah.
And I know that I'm then working in the right output to be able to get the desired result. Whereas the further you go down that, the more reps that you start to do, the harder it then becomes for a lot of people to then determine, am I lifting the right weight for the right amounts? Because there's your mind kicks into it a lot more than in the lower reps, in my experience.
Yeah. Ronnie Coleman, 8 times Mr. Olympia. I've seen some videos of him when he was in his prime, squatting over 800 pounds. It's incredible the amount of weight that he used. Thor from Game of Thrones, I think he broke the world record of the deadlift, 501 kilogram raw. It's impressive. Yeah. In terms of strength, long-term effects, have you done much reading or research into long-term effects, especially with powerlifters, because they complain once their their career has finished, a lot of these guys end up with a lot of issues. I mean, Ronnie Coleman has a lot of problems right now. I think he's had multiple surgeries.
Yep. And so I think I'm not sure where the line is when it comes to that level of strength and that longevity piece, because lifting 800, 500 kilos is not natural for a human being.
No.
So not only, because at that point, it's not just muscular strength, like the stress that you put on your bones, on your ligaments, on your tendons, on your joints, on all those things is massive. One of the things that I have seen though is really beneficial when it comes to the longevity is the health, like the skeletal and muscular and joint health of gymnasts.
Yeah.
So because of the plyometrics and the compact, that massively improves the bone density and things like that, which is awesome. A lot of the training that they do is also calisthenics. So it's based on, moving your own body, which then makes it a lot easier for your tendons and your ligaments to keep up with that side of things. And so when you think about the intent, like what is meaningful or useful when it comes to that strength through old age and all that kind of stuff, you don't need to be able to lift 3 times your body weight to have that optimal health. Like I coached a guy in the US that was, how old was he? He was 65, and
wow.
he was deadlifting and he was benching for the first time and was actually getting really strong. Got to the point he could bench 100 kilos and was like phenomenal, man, doing really well.
Incredible. Wow.
And his goal was like, as much as his physique improved and he looked like tip top, his reasoning for doing this was, I want to be able to pick my wife up if she falls.
Yes.
Right. I want to be able to lift myself up off the ground if I fall, if she has a fall. Like, I don't want to be this fragile old man that can't help anyone, that can't look after himself. So he wanted to be self-reliant in that space, which I think is a much better way of thinking about it, because then it comes into play how you move your body. Well, it's not just the strength, it's not just lifting some barbells and dumbbells, it's also the mobility that you need to be able to do that. So can you squat down in a deep squat? Can you put your own shoes on? Can you do all this kind of stuff through a full range of motion, even with just your own body weight, or even just with a backpack on or something like that, as opposed to having to load up the bar, load up the leg press or anything like that, which, you take that stuff outside of the gym. And then as you get into your older age, the usefulness of that starts to get lower.
Yeah. So it's more for longevity.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yes. And where to from here, mate? So you're still coaching online. You've got your supplement business. What's the next 5 years look like for you?
So next 5 years for me looks like, getting Primal Energies to in just more people's hands. I want to get that to a point where, like, at the moment, I'm still making everything by hand. which
Yeah.
is as cool to say, which I like doing, but has very limited capacity for growth and things like that. And also,
Yeah.
my missus getting the shits of having mushroom stuff, cacao all over the kitchen every time I have to make
Yeah.
that up.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not ideal. And so, I want to get to a point where, okay, I can set up a factory or something to produce a lot of that stuff, so I can do more of the relationship building, more of the face of it, things like that. Because one of the things that I do love about business is the connection side of things. Like, I don't
Yes.
think business has to be a thing of, well, if you're winning, then I can't win, so fuck you, and it's me against you, and like all this competitive side of things. Like, yes, we can have competition, but I can support you and you can support me, and we can do all these things together, because ultimately we're here because we want to improve people's lives. We want to do it in a sustainable, holistic way that aligns with our values. We're not here to cheat each other and things like that. And so I want to be able to connect with more people that are, have the ethics and want to do business and do life
Yeah.
with those kind of values as the priority.
I
And
love
so,
that. Yeah.
like, I just don't see how anybody can lose doing it that way, right? And then so, even in, like, from a primal standpoint, like, I've started reaching out to a lot more coaches because of the success that I've had with JCF, of us suggesting primal to our clients, how well that's gone, then partnering with other coaches that can kind of do the same. Then they get their little clip, their clients get an awesome product that their coach believes in because they've tried it, they've loved it themselves. They get a cool little discount because they're getting it through someone that is, I've spoken to, and we've kind of organized that agreement. And so everybody in the chain wins.
Yeah.
And I just don't see how, like, I'm not a multi-millionaire, so take my business advice with a grain of salt, but at least if I'm doing business that way, whether it makes me millions of dollars or not, I can at least rest easy at night knowing that I haven't had to sell my soul to make a
Yeah.
couple of bucks. Right?
Yes. I love that. I think the idea of having passion, but making a positive impact and adding something to the world is so gratifying. And I appreciate everything that you do in the fitness community, mate. And it's been an absolute pleasure sitting down and talking with you. Where can people find you, Harry?
So people can find me on Instagram either as Primal Energies is the mushroom brand, or my coaching and my personal one, harrison.j.orr on Instagram. That's ORR. And then from there, you'll find links to the websites and Facebook groups and all that kind of stuff. But that's the best place to either send me a DM, or if you've got any questions about either the mushroom stuff or the coaching, anything we've kind of touched on today, just like this conversation, I love connecting with people, love having those
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
Again, if what I've got is what you're interested in, cool. Otherwise, there's stacks of resources there, or happy to kind of point you in the direction if there's something else that I might know. Ultimately, that's a person that I kind of want to be, as almost like that librarian type thing. It's like, okay, it might
Yeah.
not be in my wheelhouse, but I know a guy, right?
Yeah.
Go talk to this
Yeah.
guy, go check this out, go here. And then, I just, that's the way I like to be. I don't want to pretend to know shit that I don't, because
Yeah.
I'm lucky enough to have met a fair few people that are experts in their field, and just be able to kind of direct people to what they need at the time.
Yeah.
Like, I like that.
And it's how you and I connected, mate. We connected over the internet. The fitness community is huge. Mate, thank you so much for your time. And I will speak to you soon. Thanks, Harry.
100%. Pleasure, my man. Thank you very much for having me.